Good morning again and welcome. Glad to have you out with us. Not going to go down this road this morning. My family had to endure a little bit, but we truly are fearfully and wonderfully made. God has made our bodies beyond what we can know here on earth. It's going to take us to be in heaven for Him to tell us what He's done before we understand how great His works are, because we are still in human bodies and we don't understand all the stuff that God has done, but our God is great and worthy of praise. This morning, the message is the message God gave me yesterday, not the one He gave me last week. I was done. I was going to have a Saturday to kind of like goof off, and then as I was studying for the message that I thought I was going to be preaching, He said, now this is the one you're going to be preaching tomorrow. And it's like, okay, we can do that. Glad for all of you that got to make it out to the revival this last week. Thankful for Chris, gets her back safe and sound, and he and Jenny. I think we got every night recorded but one, maybe. So they'll be on our website if you didn't get to come out and see them. If I said something about the model prayer, or the Lord's Prayer, most of you know what I was talking about. In Scripture, the disciples asked Him, teach us how to pray. And Christ said, here's how you pray. Our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we forgive those who are our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and power and glory forever. And that is the model prayer. That is what He said. Here's how you pray. Here's the elements that your prayer should have. But He wasn't just teaching us in His life here how to pray. He was also modeling for us how we are to be His servant, how we're to be the church of His church, the church of Christ. So the message this morning is the model servant or the model church, the way the church should be. And we're going to be in John. You'll recognize the chapter real fast, but we're not going to read the most familiar part. But John is talking about God with us, Emmanuel, Jesus the Christ, the kingdom among men. And John quickly records his birth by saying the Word was made flesh. And then He was baptized. The temptation is not recorded because He's God. He's focusing on His godness, and God's not tempted. He calls some disciples, and then He starts ministering. And He ministers to the Jews, Nicodemus first. He ministers to the Samaritans, a Samaritan woman, and then He goes and ministers to the Gentiles. And that is the model that He gives later on. He says, here's the commission. Go to Jerusalem and to Judea and to Samaria and to the uttermost parts of the earth. So He starts out, here's what I want you to do. I will demonstrate it for you. Now, you go do it. And we're going to start today talking about Nicodemus and the Samaritan woman and the ruler of Capernaum. And before we go into the message, let's have a prayer. Our Father God, thank you again for this morning. Thank you for each one that's here. And Lord, help your word to go out as it should to them. In spite of what I may do to it, I don't think I can assist your word in saying what it says. But Father, help me not to mess it up. We thank you that you've given us your word, that you didn't leave us to our own experiences, to the experiences of other people who may or may not have been right, that you sent your very word to us through Christ. In the Old Testament, you inspired men to write. In the New Testament, you inspired men to write, to give us what we need, more than we can comprehend, but what we need to live righteous lives before you. We thank you for the offering for our sins, and help us to use that to its full advantage, Father, not to sin, not to live a licentious life, but Father, has power to spread your gospel to the world that many might be saved. We ask these things in Christ's name, amen. So we'll get into the example here in a second, but our church's teaching should draw religious people, religious, in quotes, people, into here. And in John chapter 3, verse 1, it says, and I'll do verse 1 and verse 2, there is a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews. The same came to Jesus by night and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher come from God, for no man can do these miracles that you do, except God be with him. It says that there was a man. Now this man was a Pharisee. Pharisees were very well versed in Scripture. How many of you have Genesis through Deuteronomy memorized? Okay. Most of the Pharisees would do that. They would work on learning the first 5 books of the Bible well enough that they could quote them to you. They knew them. So he was a Pharisee. He was very religious. He knew the law. He probably knew the prophets, maybe not as well because there's a lot more to learn there. But he was religious. He was a Jew of the Jews. The Pharisees, I think, maybe were a minority sect. I may be wrong on that. The Sadducees, I think, were a little more numerous. And the Pharisees knew that they were more pious than the Sadducees, because the Sadducees discounted most of the Old Testament. The Pharisees, this was God's word and they held to it. And also, he was a ruler of the Jews, which meant he must be pretty well connected, because if the Sadducees are primarily in charge, for them to lay a Pharisee on the Sanhedrin, he must have had something going that got their attention, that they would allow him to be there. But this man, who's very spiritually connected, very socially connected, was still a man. And as a man, he was lost. But this man came to Jesus at night for any of several reasons. It doesn't say. I think the one I've heard most often probably is he was very socially connected, so he didn't want people to know that he was going to Jesus. He was very spiritual, religiously connected, studied the Bible. Didn't want people to know he was going for counsel from somebody else, because that's saying that you're somebody that knows more than me. Or maybe he's just a busy man. Some people work hard during the day. They do some stuff to tidy up in the evening, and now they need to go out and take care of some stuff at the end of the day. Could have been that. But at any rate, he did come to Jesus at night, privately. And he starts out with an interesting salutation. We would say teacher. Probably Hebrew, I guess his word is rabbi. So he meets him and says, teacher. We know, and that could be just a kind of a collective we, maybe not speaking for the Sanhedrin, but just trying to hide himself behind the plural pronoun. He says, we know that you are a teacher. So he addresses him as teacher, and he, in his talk to him, he says, you are a teacher come from God. For no one can do these miracles that you do except God be with him. And the miracles only emphasized more that the teaching was good teaching. He didn't say, Rabbi, we know that you're a miracle worker come from God, but he's a teacher. He's a teacher come from God. His teaching, supplemented by miracles, has drawn the attention of the Sanhedrin, and Nicodemus in particular, and Nicodemus comes to talk to him. And that's why, if we follow the model of Christ, our churches should be teaching in such a way that people who are seeking God and know about God and want to know more about God come to hear about Him from us. And that's not just me or George or Russ or Chris standing up here and talking to you. How many minutes, I wrote down minutes first, of education and study would you wish that your doctor had? 10, 15 minutes? That'd be good? I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express and I've been to college for a couple of days till they kicked me out. Do you have any idea about how many hours someone has to be trained to be a physician? Somebody want to take a guess? Hours. you're an order of magnitude low, I think. About 100,000 hours of education. 4 years of regular college, 4 years of medical school, 4 years of residency. And on the residency, they're working 7 days a week, 10, 12, however many hours a day. So something around, and this could be way off, but I'm going to say something around 100,000 hours. Now, how many of you have had 100,000 hours of medical training? How many of you have practiced medicine? Don't lie to me. Have you ever stuck a thermometer in your child's mouth or their ear? Have you ever put a cuff on your own arm at Walmart or someplace to check your blood pressure? Okay. Do you call a doctor every time you take Tylenol? Do you give your children Tylenol without consulting a physician? We used to give them aspirin. If you can't do that anymore, it kills you, I guess. So we have done some medical procedures. Some people, I forget now who all, Ada I think has diabetes. So don't you poke yourself and have a little medical device where you check your, and Stephen. So he's practicing a little bit of medicine that he's been trained at. And hopefully this doesn't embarrass Steve, but if I had to have my appendix out, I wouldn't go to you. Okay, even though you practice medicine a little bit, I think I'd try to find somebody more along those lines of 100,000 hours than you, or Ada. I trust Ada a lot. Now sometimes things happen. I remember reading this little kid in the Reader's Digest, one of the great literary magazines, about, maybe even in school, but when the Philippines fell, some Americans went with Filipinos up into the mountains to hold out there until the Americans came back to the islands. One of the guys got appendicitis, and they had to take his appendix out or he's going to die. That's where you know you can be a doctor. If I leave this alone, the person's going to die, so let's just see what might happen. So they took a knife, they got it hot, they probably had some liquor with them to help numb the pain a little bit. So they got him soused a little bit, and they took his appendix out, and he lived. So it can happen. I wouldn't suggest it, but you probably want somebody with a little more experience. So, not that you have to be a doctor to practice medicine a little, but if you're going to be a doctor, you probably want a doctor who has done a little bit more than taking temperatures, blood pressure, and stuck somebody for checking their sugar. How many hours do you suppose in those 12 years, so let's say 12 years, that a guy has gone through medical school or a girl's gone through medical school, how many hours has the average Christian spent in education and study? No guesses?
I don't know.
Maybe 5,000 hours. If they show up for Sunday school and church, evening church and Wednesday, and study about 30 minutes a week on their own. So in the 12 years that someone's become a doctor, they have spent about 100,000 hours. In the same 12 years, Joe average practicing Christian has probably studied the Bible and been in church about 5,000. So, I want to be saved. I'm going to come to you and you get to lead me to Christ. Do you feel prepared? You may not, but you can practice some medicine without being a doctor. You can do some things for Christ without being a PhD. But here's what I'm telling you. That is woefully below where we should be. If we're going to be known as a church that teaches Christ, 5,000 hours in 12 years is nothing. Now, does that mean I'm telling everybody you better be here for 5 hours each evening to hear the Word of God? Well, no. The early church was kind of that way, but I'm not saying that. As a matter of fact, I think the 4 times through the week probably, kind of maxing out all folks' schedules. But it's not just me or George or Chris or Russ preaching to you up here, but we have Sunday school. So teachers need to be teaching their classes. And parents, this is where it really comes home, literally, parents need to be teaching their children. I didn't look this one up, it came to my mind later, but in the Old Testament, it says they're supposed to observe these feasts and festivals. And when the children came to him and said, "Dad, why are we doing this?" Then the father was supposed to relate to him, "This is God's work. This is what God did for us." And the father was supposed to be teaching the children what they were supposed to do. And then not only that, but in Titus it says the older are to teach the younger. So it's not just an hour here or half an hour here, once a week or twice a week or 3 times a week or 4 times a week, but we should be known as people who educate our children and our church about Jesus Christ. And you know what happened when Christ taught people about God? People who were religious came in and said, "Tell me about this. I want to know." So if we want to transform our churches need to be all about the Word of God and teaching it. Not just at the pulpit, but in our homes, in our communities, and it will draw people's attention. We don't have dozens of people walking in our door each week who are highly religious, saying, "I've heard that you guys teach the Word more than any other church," and that's not meant to be an indictment on us. I don't want you to take it that way. But maybe it means that there's not that many religious people out there not going to church, not associated with somebody. Maybe they're irreligious, non-religious, a-religious. They aren't necessarily evil people, but religion doesn't have a place in their lives. And if that's the case, our church has another responsibility. Our church's activities away from here should be to find those people who aren't coming here. And in John chapter 4, start with verse 1, I'll go through verse 8, so John 4, 1 through 8. When therefore the Lord knew how the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples than John, though Jesus himself baptized not these disciples, he left Judea and departed again into Galilee. Part of the deal was his ministry wasn't over. The Pharisees their attention was being drawn to them. He knew he had to separate himself from them a little bit because the time of his crucifixion had not yet come. And when he left Judea and departed into Galilee, he did something that no good Jew would ever do, and that was he didn't skirt Samaria. Usually they'd leave Jerusalem, go out, around, and up, and come back into Galilee. He said, "But I have to go through Samaria." Then comes he to the city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near to the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus therefore, being wearied from his journey, sat thus at the well, and it was about the 6th hour, or noon. There comes a woman from Samaria to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me to drink." For his disciples were gone away into the city to buy meat. Now Jesus did something that no good Jew would ever do. That was he went through Samaria. But he went through Samaria because people in Samaria need to hear the Word of God. There are some places out here that we may not want to go to because they're kind of evil places. But guess what? People in evil places need to hear about Jesus Christ. He breached a lot of protocols. He was a man alone, speaking to a woman alone. She recognized quickly that he was a Jew. She knew she was a Samaritan. And she said, "We got nothing in common, except Abraham's our father. But I worship here on Mount Gerizim, or whatever it's called, or Ebal, or wherever they are. And you guys, you worship down there in Jerusalem. And, why is it that you're speaking to me? We still worship the golden calves. You guys don't do that. We got nothing really in common." But Jesus, and most of you know the story, Jesus started talking to her, and in talking to her, she realized that this is the Messiah, and she was saved. And then she went and told other people about it. So maybe people aren't knocking down the doors. I know if they were relying on me to be the preacher that would be that dynamic preacher that would get them in here, they're not going to come. But if you guys go out, the folks you rub elbows with, if you share with them the gospel, guess what? When they get saved, they're going to be looking for a place to come and hear God's Word. So our church's activities away from here, and this is looking at me as much as anybody else, should be to carry the gospel out to those that need it. If you started a rental car company here in Robinson, and I think the only one that was open is closed. Does anybody know that for sure? Can you rent a car in Robinson? I don't think so. The collision place up here used to have them maybe. So you've got a wild hair and you're going to start a business. And you're going to start a rental car business. And you didn't do market research ahead of time and all these sorts of things. But if you had a rental car company in Robinson, how would you advertise it? Hey, you got a rental car company. One car. Not if your livelihood depended on it. There's not much of a market here to begin with, so you have to go out and say, Chris, does your car ever break down? What happens when it breaks down? How much does it cost you to get it fixed? And does your insurance pay for your rental car when you have it, or can you get a rental car? Does the dealership have one for you? Well, guess what? I have rental cars now. And since I'm trying to get started, I'll give you a real deal on a rental car. You're still not ready to get one because I'm not a salesman. But if you wanted to be successful, you'd have to get out on pavement and go around and get people to realize that they have a need for it, and then be ready to provide it. Now, if I finally convince Chris that I have a car for him to rent, and he comes, and it's my 17, 18-year-old standard S10, he might use it in a pinch because he had to, but he'd be looking for something a little different. When we present Christ, we need to make sure that we are doing it as he should be presented. Not as a second-rate alternative to something that you like better, but this is the Christ, the way, the truth, and the life. And if we want folks to be in our community to hear the gospel, they're not going to hear it? Okay, let me back up. They will hear the gospel here. But if they're not here, they're not going to hear the gospel. So we've got to take the gospel out to them. Rub elbows with them, the folks that we're comfortable with, and the folks that we're not so comfortable with. The ones completely different from us. It's easy to go to the folks like us at work. Engineers talk to engineers because nobody wants to talk to us besides engineers. But if teachers like to talk to teachers, you talk to the folks you're familiar with and share the gospel with them. But you also get to share it with folks who are completely different than you. The mayor of Robinson is pretty down to earth. I don't know him that well, but share it with the mayor, share it with the police, share it with the firemen, share it with the guys that walk up and down the street picking up cans. Anybody you see, even if you're not comfortable, they need to hear the gospel. Christ went to somebody completely different than him to share the gospel. So if we're going to model our Christ as his church, we need to take the gospel to those who are the same as us and who are different. If we continually teach the truth, and if we continually seek out those who are nominally religious or irreligious or don't come, pretty soon we may find out that the lost come and start seeking Christ. So our church's faithfulness will eventually cause people to realize that they have needs that only God can fulfill. And still in John chapter 4, verses 45 through 47. Then, when he was come into Galilee, the Galileans received him, having seen all the things that he did at Jerusalem at the feast. For they also went into the feast. So this is Christ's faithfulness in doing God's will had drawn the attention of folks dozens of miles away. So Jesus came again into Cana of Galilee, where he made the water wine, and there was a nobleman whose son was sick at Capernaum. And this is probably a Roman citizen kind of person, not a Jew. So Christ has gone to Nicodemus, and Nicodemus has come to him. He's hit the Jews, he's hit the Samaritans, and now he's going to the uttermost parts of the world. And there's a nobleman there whose son was sick. And when he heard that Jesus was come out of Judea into Galilee, he went to him and besought him that he would come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. The notoriety of Christ's work had started to fill the whole region of Judea and Samaria and the regions around. Our faithfulness in serving Him will result in folks coming and seeking Him. And I guess, are we ready for that? We see the crowds that followed Jesus. 5,000 people came in and they were hungry, or 15,000 people, and He fed them. Have you ever seen a grade school cafeteria after they're done eating? That's a messy thing, isn't it? Feeding people can be messy. Have you, hopefully not, been in a surgery, or in a room after surgery's been done? She had just a little stent put in one time, and she noticed how that they've taken great care to cover everything with little baggies so that, dust doesn't fall off. And then the realization is like, no, that's to make it easier to clean up after blood splatters everywhere. Surgery is messy. Eating is messy. People are messy. If we fulfill our faithful duty to Christ and folks start coming, guess what? It's going to be messy. The Samaritan woman had not worshipped the way the Jews worshipped for many years. It was going to take a while to get her up to where she needed to be. The Romans and the Greeks served dozens of gods. Christianity is monotheistic. It was going to take time for them to come around to worship the one and only God. So as we are faithful to Him, I'd like to say, hey, things get great, people come in, and there's nothing to worry about. That's when the work begins. All this is just getting us ready for the work that we have to do. But we need to be ready, because how many of you like going to Walmart? I thought you were getting ready to raise your hand, David.
Currently, I do come here every day.
Yeah, and we go there every day because even though we may not like the lines and there's other things that get in our way, we're pretty sure we can find what we're looking for when we get there. There are stores that I used to go get stuff at, and then that thing became less and less likely to get, and finally they didn't have it ever or offer to get it, so I went someplace else. We need to be ready, because once we have whetted their appetite for Jesus Christ, if they come and we don't have Him, they may come once, or they may come twice, but if we don't produce, and I'm saying this in a worldly way, but if we don't bring Christ to them, they won't darken our door anymore and they'll go looking someplace else. So we have to get our hearts lined up with Christ, knowing that as we start this work of preaching the gospel, of teaching our children, of teaching our church, of spreading the gospel, rubbing elbows with our neighbors, taking the word to them, that people will respond. Christ said in John chapter 12, He said it a lot in John, I'm going to be lifted up like the Moses lifted the serpent up. But He said, when I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men to me. He says He's going to make it pretty easy on us. Here's what you have to do. You have to lift me up. And if you lift me up, I will draw people to you. It's not that we have to be persuasive speakers or great teachers or wonderful evangelists. We have to lift up Christ. And if we lift Him up, He will draw all people to Him. This message started out as a message of salvation. It's just going to be John chapter 3, but it changed. I would rather have preached the message of salvation. It's easier, because when I start telling me and you that we may have to do more things, that's not as easy of a message to receive. It's not as easy as a message to give. That God is calling us to be lovers of His Word and to teach it, to carry it out to those around us. I don't want to, I don't know, I won't get the right word, I don't want you to misunderstand me, but I don't want to belittle the work that is done here. I think there's wonderful things that are done here. But I think there's even greater things that can be done if we let Him work through us. All of us would easily admit that we're not perfect, and we would admit that this is not a perfect church. So let's strive for that perfection that Christ has said. Be you holy, be perfect as I am perfect. That's the only thing he calls us to, is to be perfect in him. Lift him up. He is the one. Gardening is probably a good illustration that the Bible uses and we can understand today too. How can you make your stuff grow better? I'll back up. How can you make your seeds germinate? You go out and plant all the seeds. How can you make them germinate faster?
Use Miracle-Gro.
Give them Miracle-Gro. But if they don't sprout, Miracle-Gro's not going to do anything. I think they need warmth and moisture, right? You can water it. But if you get a bad seed, it's not going to grow. The seed has all it needs in there. It just has to have some warmth and moisture and it will grow. The seed that we are distributing is good seed. Sometimes it hits the stony ground and it doesn't sprout like we like for it to. Sometimes it gets into the weeds. And as much as we try to keep the weeds out of the garden, they choke out the plant. There's a parable about that, about how not everyone that hears is going to respond, and not everyone that responds is going to continue. But we have a treasure that we can share with our community. We have God's Word, we have the message of salvation, and if we do that faithfully, we better be ready. Because God doesn't always take 430 years to do something. When he put the Israelites down in Exodus, he said, I'm doing this for a reason, and you're going to be there for 430 years. And then I'm going to pull you out, and you're going to destroy the Canaanites. He had a plan. When Peter, after about 3 years of training, preached the first message after the day of Pentecost, how many new people came into the church at Jerusalem? On the first one, 5,000 people. Are we ready for 5,000 people to come in here tomorrow? That'd be something, wouldn't it? We would have to be doing something to handle that. The same God that added to his church 5,000 people then is the same God that can add to our church today. Christ modeled our service for us. We need to teach his word. And you may not think that you're a teacher. Guess what? You're wrong. Okay? You may not be called to be a teacher in the church, but if you are an elder person, you have been called to teach the younger people. If you are a parent, you have been called to teach your children. So we're all teachers. And we need to teach God's word. It will go crossways with the world. I remember when my daughter was born thinking, you know what? I have just made her world miserable because I'm going to have her crossways with everything the world's doing for the rest of her life as much as is within me. But you're teachers. Get into his word and teach. Teach yourself. The average, I was kind of encouraged by this, the average of people who study, so these are people who study, this is helping, is about 30 minutes a day. So I'm going to encourage you to hit that average. Some people were just boasters and they were like 2 or 4 hours a day. But 30 minutes, if you can get 30 minutes of study in a day, you'd be surprised in a year what difference that's going to make to you. And then for me, maybe for you, get out and rub elbows with people that you're friends with, people that you're enemies with, people that look like you, don't look like you. Everybody, carry the message out to them. And then be ready for your faithfulness to be rewarded by folks coming to hear Christ, to receive Christ and to serve him. Phyllis and Loretta, come ahead up for the invitation. This was not a message necessarily to lead you to salvation, but it may have challenged your heart to, you may have understood, I don't have this. I am not this religious person who studies God's Word that I want to hear more. I'm maybe this irreligious person who's been living my own life, and I need to change. If you realize that and need to be saved, this is a good time to take care of that. But also, after hearing the messages from Chris, and after hearing today how Jesus has modeled out for us to go out to the world and to share the gospel with the world, and you want to do that a little better, this is a good time to commit to Him. You will fail. You won't hit it every time. Every at-bat won't be a home run. But this is a good time to make a commitment to Him to fulfill the call that He has for you. So, song, please stand.